Morning, everybody. How was the midterm? Is there any problem areas you guys want to go over? Okay. Good question, Orlando. Um, I'm going to be looking over grades. Midterm grades are due tomorrow. I probably won't get them all the way graded. I'm probably going to start and just see if anybody needs to know the grade in order to get their midterm grade. So I'm probably looking at a week. That's what I'm shooting for. Morning. Just keep in mind the things that we've talked about going forward, because you'll be able to use them, especially in combination for your writing in the future, including the final research project that we're going to work on. All right, good questions. Anybody else? I do want you guys to start thinking about what controversial topic that you might want to do your paper on. So I'm going to show you a resource at the library. It's a good place to just go and read and sort of get an overview. It's called Opposing Viewpoints. And what it is just a collection of sources that addresses controversial topics on both sides. So again, what is a controversy? Remember, anyone remember the definition? Basically, it's an issue that people disagree about that has reasonable opinions on both sides. So if you're going to look at a controversy, like, you don't want to argue something like child abuse is bad, because we really hope there's nobody out there arguing child abuse is good, right? I mean, sure, there are differences of opinion on how we discipline kids, but pretty much the universal consensus is that abusing kids is not good, right? So you have to have something to argue against that has a reasonable opposition to it. And there are plenty of issues that we argue about, new ones that come up and old ones that we've been arguing about for a long time. Okay. And again, as with all the papers, I ask that you start small with your issue. Like right now, you might be reading about a large topic area that you're interested in, like immigration. But basically, you can't write an entire 8-page paper on immigration because they've written books and even some that are even smaller on immigration-specific places. So you have to really narrow it down. So maybe more like a chapter heading in a book would be a good topic. But right now, you're just kind of getting a feel for what you're interested in and that what you would like to research. I hope that you go into it with an open mind, because ideally, your opinion will be guided by the research that you find, not made up before. Because if you make up your mind before, all you do is go and seek out information that confirms your bias. Okay? And a research paper is supposed to be something that just explores an issue. You're going to come to your opinion based on the research that you've done, because that is a solid opinion versus just what you think from hearing snippets. We all do that. We all come to opinion just by kind of hearing about it without researching it. I mean, that's human nature. But for a research paper, you have to really show where your information came from and how you're going to support your argument. So we'll get into narrowing it even more for a research question. But right now, I just want you to find a couple issues that you might be interested in exploring. So let's take a look at the database in the library. Excuse me. I'm going to share my screen. So if you go to our main page for McKendree, you'll get to see that one of the tabs says academic. Okay. And then you're going to go down here to Holman Library. Are you with me so far? You click on Holman Library. Okay. And under Find, it's going to give you some options. Since we're mainly online, I mean, the library is open, but I think they have restrictions. But a lot of your information is going to come from searching online under this section, which is the A to Z database list. Okay. You're also going to be able to search the catalog, and we have agreements with other colleges to share resources. So it isn't necessarily just something that McKendree has. You can order books. but you want to make sure that you do that in enough time, of course, to get them and look them over. But for today, I want to talk about the database list. So if you go to find and then A to Z database list, so there are some that are very general, like academic search complete covers a lot of territory. You might start there with some of your research later on. Right now, we're just going to kind of read about issues. And one place you can go is, I just talked about the name of the database is Opposing Viewpoints. So I'm going to go to the O's. I'm going to go down here to Opposing Viewpoints in Context. That's the full name of the database. I click on it. I'll have to sign in. You don't like that one? Mm-hmm. Maybe I'll sign in. I can't remember the last time I changed my password. All right. Dang it. It's not going to let me into here, and I'm going to have to fix my password. Hopefully you guys won't have the same problem I do. If you do, you need to contact the library and let them know, because I've had people have problems in the past logging in. I'll have to get my password updated. So let's look at another place that you can look for general discussions of things, and that's Wikipedia. Now I know that there's some controversy about using Wikipedia as a source, right? You guys familiar with this? And generally you don't want to use it as a source, a specific source for things in your paper, but actually studies have been done that show it's a pretty accurate encyclopedia overall. Yes, somebody can go in and mess it up for about a day or two, but somebody will usually figure it out and come back and change it back to the correct information. So it usually is a good place to get an overview of topics. Okay. First, let's talk about how, before we get into Wikipedia, how to divide up topic areas. So one good way to think of it is topic areas that you're interested in. So like some of you are going into medicine or physical therapy, some of you law enforcement. So you could either do something just that you're interested in or something that applies that would be useful to know in your major later on. They can kind of give you a leg up on what if you don't know what you're going into, that's fine too. You can just pick an area that you might be interested in. So you kind of think of these large areas like laws, medicine, politics. You guys think of some other areas that you might be interested in reading about? Psychology, yes. So so if you take an area like psychology, there are controversies about treatments, about public policy, toward mental health, right? That's a good one. We'll start looking at on Wikipedia. What are some others? Is anybody already thinking about a controversy they might be interested in, or an area of controversy? What's been in the news lately?
The Rona.
Yeah, so there's a lot about how to handle that, the boundaries between authoritarianism and public health, right? That's a legitimate controversy. So handling the pandemic, online schooling. Yeah, I'm kind of getting tired of how, I mean, they're like, we know online schooling is horrible. I don't particularly think it's horrible. I mean, there are definitely drawbacks to it, but there are also
It's kind
advantages.
of necessary.
It is right now, right? Also, it gives access to people who wouldn't ordinarily have access, right? Oh, I'm glad, yeah. A lot of people are just, you can see how it'd be difficult for an 8-year-old to sit in front of a screen all day. But part of the reason it's probably not working well is that we haven't had to do it, so they don't have the techniques, you know what I'm saying? Although I am on a board on Facebook, and some of these teachers are really, really creative with their elementary school students. But, you know, of course, unfortunately, in our country, a lot of kids get food through schools. So if they don't go to school, they don't get fed. So yeah, I can see both sides. Again, that is a legitimate controversy. There are reasonable opinions on both sides. But somebody who wants to go to college but has like kids and can't afford a babysitter can go like asynchronously. Like our class does meet at a specific time, but I've also taught online classes that do not meet at a specific time, and you can, you know, I still have deadlines, but people do the work when they can, and if that's, you know, at 2 a.m. while their kids are asleep, that works for them. You know, we do it synchronously, which means we all synchronate and come to the same place. Asynchronously in an online class means they, you know, you can do the work when you can, whenever you have time. So yeah, that would be an interesting papers like the online. Another controversy related to the coronavirus is like how many women are having to quit their jobs versus men. I mean, we hope we've made some progress in being equal in terms of like responsibilities for families, but still the largest burden tends to fall on women. So a lot more women are not coming back because their kids are not back in school. So it's sort of an interesting dynamic, and how will that affect their career and their earnings and all those kinds of things. Because if you're out of the workforce for a time, you know, it could be detrimental. Of course, I would hope people would understand right now why people are out of the workforce. So yeah, education, that's a big topic area that you could look at. I think immigration, right? You also want to make sure that whatever issue you're looking at has enough research to back up a research paper, because there might be some really interesting controversies, but if people haven't done a lot of research, it doesn't mean like, so for example, maybe bee pollen cures lots of things. I don't know, but if there's not enough research to back up your position, then it's not a good topic for a research paper. So let's look at Wikipedia and online schooling and psychology as a couple topics, just to sort of get a sense of reading about it. We'll start with psychology. Um, so the science of mind and behavior, right? So it's going to kind of divide things up into different areas. And you can just get a kind of overview about it. And then of course the contents divide up the different kinds, you know, what things have to do with biological, like they've done scans of people's brains who are depressed, and there are definitely changes to their brain that are biological, right? So what,
And apparently they age. I'm sorry.
go ahead, no.
But apparently, depressed people actually age faster. Like a person who's severely depressed that's 23, and a person that's not really depressed that's 23. That depressed person is biologically older than the non-depressed person.
Really? That is
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, see, I love the research part of writing. I like to go and see and learn new things. So you really want to pick an area that you're really interested in like this, um, so that you make sure it maintains your interest throughout the writing process. But here's some applications it breaks it down into. education, work, military, health and well-being, and social change, right? So maybe you want to read more about it in education. I'm prejudiced toward education. In this case, yeah, educational psychology, school psychology, what must it be like to be a school counselor right now, during the pandemic? Sorry, I know everything is kind of colored by the pandemic these days. So you can just kind of see if this topic is most interesting to you. And if it's not, and you're reading about it and like, yeah, then you can move on to something different. You're kind of getting an overview of it. If you already can get into the opposing viewpoints database and your password works, it will have it similarly divided up. But one nice thing about it is that it'll have like what are some current controversies, some new things that have been added, and a bit more specific. And actually talking about things like online education is a bit more specific. So let's see what Wikipedia has to say about online education. Distance learning, it's also called. They talk about what it involves, whether it's synchronous or asynchronous learning, right? So you can kind of look over the contents and see the technologies that are used. Are you interested in that? Paced and self-paced models, benefits, criticism. So criticism might be a good place to go to kind of see what the controversies are about, right? A lot of people have unreliable technology or in rural areas. So, I know some people in rural areas who do not have like solid continuous access. Some of you have already experienced problems and you're on campus at a college, So it can be unreliable in terms of the technology. I would hope that will still get better going forward. Healthcare professions. I tutor people online in the writing center. So educational technology. So you can look at, some people are saying, why do we have colleges at all? Do you think we still need like physical buildings that people go to and gather at? It's an interesting question.
I was gonna give a one-sided answer, but much like any other topic, there's always nuance to other sides and stuff. So I don't know.
Well, you still got to give your opinion. What is your opinion about it?
I mean, I don't really see the point in there being buildings where people gather, because of the Rona. So
Well, yes, but
I personally
go ahead.
no, continue. That's all I really wanted.
Does anybody have any opinions on the other side? Do you think that there is a benefit to having, places that people come and congregate and
I mean, I guess social distancing and wearing a mask, but not everyone's compliant with all that stuff. So
yeah, you can definitely focus on like the advantages right now or the disadvantages of it. Hopefully going forward, after, people are immunized and we get back to it, I don't know, cultures are very hard to change. We've been doing education like this for 100 years, and I think the idea of it, I don't know.
there's like face detectors in other countries and stuff. Like before you enter a store, you have to like look at this camera, and if it sees that you're wearing a mask, it'll let you in or something. I saw a
Interesting.
video.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's become controversial in this country. There's another issue, politics. Yeah. So you can kind of start with a broad area that you're interested in and then narrow it down. The Supreme Court, of course, but that's become probably more involved in politics than it should be. So you have the large educations like education, medicine, law, society, culture, right? Pop culture, media. What is its influence? So then you sort of narrow it down to a specific area. So you get into media. How can you narrow it down further? What are some more areas of media that are more breaking it down? What kinds of media are there? Kaylee, what kinds of media are there? We say the media, what do we mean? Julia, you got some ideas? Jeannie,
What's the question?
what kinds of media are there? When we say the media, what are we usually talking about?
Like the news,
The news is definitely one, like
Fox, CNN.
the television networks.
Yeah.
There's also, what other kinds of news organizations besides TV?
Websites.
Yep. Cole, can you think of any others?
Did someone say like social media?
Social media has definitely become a source of news. Reliable, unreliable, that's a controversy, right? Does anybody listen to the radio anymore? I've really gotten away from it since I don't drive. Since I'm at home, you know, not driving back and forth to McKendree. That used to be my radio time. Incidentally, that's another good place to kind of go and get an overview of news. NPR, National Public Radio. You know how we have PBS in this country, public broadcasting, right? That's NPR is the radio version of that, where it's partially government funded investigative journalism. That's another area, right? There's some controversy about that. If you're interested in journalism as a career, about whether it's fair to go in undercover as a reporter and work at a place and investigate them, or if that's an invasion of privacy or lying. And, you know, there's some interesting issues that have come up with that. They also have a program on NPR called All Things Considered. In fact, let's go look at that. So podcasts, another form of media, right? So if I go up here and hover over it, then All Things Considered, and this is just a show that looks at what's some current issues. Some health workers suffering from addiction steal drugs meant for patients. So one controversial issue could be healthcare workers and addiction. Pandemic relief money to help narrow the digital divide on Native American reservations. So it looks like they're going to be trying to increase internet access. A lot of election stuff, of course. Social media platforms say wishing death to others violates their policies. One would hope. But should we? Should we be censoring speech? There's another whole area that's getting a lot of, how much do we let white supremacists have a platform on our regular social media? What do you guys think? Should they be allowed to have like Facebook pages that, advocate for white supremacy? Here's a link to the page I was just looking at. Should they ban some forms of speech on social media? This would actually be an excellent research question. And then the answer to the question would be your thesis, right? It'd be what you would argue in the paper. Should they ban some forms of speech on social media? Your answer would be they should ban some forms of speech on social media. They should not ban some forms of speech. And then you would have to back it up with the research. What do you guys think? What should get you banned? Threatening people with death? Hoping someone dies? I did see that notice on Twitter that anybody who wishes death on people will be banned. Orlando, what do you think? Should you be able to wish death on people?
I think as bad as it is, you're allowed to because of like freedom of speech.
And that is definitely the argument some people have.
Even though it's like not right, but it's like still,
Yeah, it's hard.
Another thing I'd like, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, another thing I'd like to bring up about some social media sites like Twitter and stuff is that, like, yeah, they'll ban you over saying, like, over wishing death over a person, but, like, they won't ban other types of harmful people and stuff. So you could outright say something racist and you could actually get away with that,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also they've been looking into things like people who are spreading misinformation about coronavirus.
Mm-hmm.
Some people have gotten banned for that. What about the anti-vaccination movement? Like, you can make an argument that they're harming great, swaths of people by arguing that vaccinations are harmful. So, yeah, I told you guys I like that quote. I may not agree with what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. But I also think there's a line, just like if you guys have heard the Supreme Court decision on free speech. I think it's Thurgood Marshall who said, yeah, you have freedom of speech, but not to go into a public theater and yell fire. And, which possibly could cause panic and injuries if there's no fire. Let me clarify, right? So also it gives legitimacy to some opinions to let them exist. Like, would we allow a site that recommends molesting children online? Because there have been, groupings of people, but they are not permitted online. So we do have a line that we draw, but it's hard to decide where that is. And there should be a line that we draw, right? So for now, I'd like you to start thinking about some controversial issues that you're interested in. And pay attention to what the news is saying about them. Start reading about them and getting to know them. Use opposing viewpoints. NPR. Wikipedia. And start thinking about it. I've also assigned some more Khan Academy exercises, which I'm going to give you guys time to work on here. We're going to do next week. I don't know if you got my email. I'm moving back the MLA group presentations. I'll say this tomorrow too in class. Because I want to talk more about chapter 5. So make sure if you haven't yet that you read chapter 5 in subjects and strategies. So we're going to start talking about how to describe things effectively. Does anybody have any questions about what's coming up? Good so far. The assignments this week mostly involve reading the chapter, and preparing for the group oral presentations for next week. So those are the things I'd like you to focus on. Yeah, we'll do a paper. It's not the research paper yet, but we're going to start a paper investigating both sides of a controversy. I'm going to open up another Zoom meeting after this. We're running out of time if you want to come and ask me questions. Otherwise, I'm going to give you time to work on the Khan Academy exercises. So the presentations are next week. And there's an email if you want to review it that I just sent out. Also an announcement on Brightspace. All right, then I will see you guys tomorrow.
Have a good one.
Go ahead. It's going to cut us off. Let me open another meeting.